Hey guys, welcome back for another week of Power Rankings with the Hockey Aussies. It's week 14, and to get us started, we've got Jaden with his 32.
Yeah, so pick 32. I have a new 32. I decided to go with the Columbus Blue Jackets on this one. It's a very tight race between 31 and 32, but I made that decision. Yeah, just very ordinary. Been ordinary all season, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you on that one. I think just the play from those above them has just been a bit better, and honestly, I think it's also got to do with the fact that we probably expect a little bit more from the Jackets than we do from those other teams. And it's just not happening for them, and I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah,
So
they didn't have big
yeah,
losses, but still 3 out of 4 losses. It's just not good, and their one win was against San Jose. But anyway, on to your pick.
all right. At P31, moving up one spot. Didn't really do too much this week, but they got the W. It's the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, it's what I've done too. Pretty close race between Anaheim and Columbus. Could be a coin flip, really. But
No, really, it
yeah.
probably was just the fact that Anaheim beat Columbus. Like,
Hmm.
if Columbus beats Anaheim, you're probably flipping that
Yeah.
those two spots. But yeah, it's almost a lock at the moment for those bottom two spots with these two teams. So
Yeah, the
it's
only
not
thing that
too much
almost
else to say on
swayed
it.
me was Anaheim's goal differential was just that horrendous, -86 compared to Columbus' 61. That's
Yeah,
what,
yeah, they just leak goals like no
yeah,
tomorrow. It's insane.
but yeah. Anyway, on to my pick number 30. Got a team actually moving down one more position. It's the Arizona Coyotes. It's
Oh,
Yeah, so I've moved them down a little bit further. It's a little disappointing because of how good and fun they are to watch. But Clayton Keller did go on a little goalless streak. But when he does score, he looks good. But this is where you expect him to be, so it's no disappointment really. But it's just they're not playing the way they were at the start of the season when they were poaching games.
yeah, exactly. I think, they've just gone into what everyone expected them to eventually get to. Um, and, they pick up one win this week against Detroit, but then they get back-to-back shutout 4-0 losses. It's just, yeah, it's good for them. This is what they're wanting. They just I'm hoping we'll still see that little bit of brilliance that we have been seeing from some of their younger players coming through, whilst they just continue to get the results that they need to keep them in that Bedard race.
Hmm.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, you
Yeah,
can't be too angry if you're a Coyote supporter. You
nah,
kind of
it's what
want
you
them
want.
to suck right now.
Yeah, it's what you want.
Exactly. All right. At 29, moving up a few spots. They've gone from absolute utter trash and didn't look like they were going to get off of P32, and now they're all the way up to P29 at Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, good week. Um, that's
Very good week.
probably their only good week of the year, but it's a good week. um,
Well,
yeah,
they did start the year well. Remember, they were 4-2 or something at the start of the year,
true, true. It's
um,
that long ago though.
and then they just yeah, it's been a long time since they've done what they did this week. That's for sure. But yeah, 3 straight wins.
Yeah.
Can't ask for
I wouldn't
much more than
say
that.
like high ranking teams they beat in Buffalo, Philadelphia, St. Louis, like no one in the top 10 or anything, but they definitely outperformed what they're expected. And scoring 5 goals on 18 shots against St. Louis is well, I don't,
Massive.
it's massive, and that's what gets you wins really. Just those sneaky
Yeah.
goals.
And not to mention, they've got 6 wins in their last 7 games. So I don't know. I think they might want to stop it though. They don't want to get too carried away. Like they were doing some pretty solid tanking there for a while.
Well, they
Um,
might be forced into a trade to make the team even
yeah,
worse.
yeah,
But
exactly.
Alrighty. Pick number 28 for me. Debated on where I'd put these teams, but I decided to go with it and put Vancouver here at 28. I honestly want to put them at 32, just for how they've treated their coach and Bruce Boudreau, but I think they've got a lot of problems now. He definitely wasn't the problem, and that's why I put them uh, below San Jose, who was there at 28, because you can't have that. He wasn't the problem. They got bigger issues there in their core, and I think they've destroyed their organization a bit in regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, he is a well-respected coach, but I do look at it the same thing is obviously they're looking to tear it down and rebuild it. So generally with something like that, you're going to move the coach on. Um, did they need to do it now? Probably not. Maybe it was the fact that the coach that they brought in, they wanted to make sure that he was going to be available, um, rather than waiting until the end of the year and then finding out that he wasn't. But um, yeah, I mean, I still think it was needed for them. They shouldn't have gone about it the way they did. They
I wholly
really,
disagree. I think Bruce is like probably the best coach on the market. If there, if you had a market, I
yeah,
think
but
he's the one.
I think
And
it's
they
just
don't
that
want to
change of
rebuild; they want to
scenery.
retool. He's
Yeah,
not the problem. That's the thing. It's the players and the management on what they've put on the ice.
yeah,
It's definitely not him. So I think it's a horrible
yeah.
thing they've done. I think it's going to set them back a few years, and it doesn't make them a good place to, if I'm a free agent, wanting to go to. Honestly.
Yeah, I didn't like the way he was treated, that's for sure. But I do think they need something and they need to shake something up. So I'm not angry at the fact that they've made that decision. It's just probably how they went about it. And it's not like you said, it's not the coach. It's a lot of things. So I don't want to just see them change the coach and then do nothing else. They need to change the coach and then change a lot of other things. If you're going to clean house, I want to see a full clean house. I don't want to just see him thrown under the bus
Yeah.
as a scapegoat.
No, well,
Um,
they got problems now because Pedersen's contract's coming up. You got Hughes coming up. Hughes probably looking at his brothers in New Jersey and where they're at and going, I don't want to be here anymore. Um,
yeah,
Pedersen's probably looking at it and going, I don't want to be here anymore. Um, yeah, I think they're going to have a really rough time signing the people they have, and it might be a really rough 5 years ahead. But anyway, moving on.
it's not going to be easy. All right. Well, yeah, my 28, I couldn't make the change with the two. I just didn't feel like the Sharks had played well enough. I've got the San Jose Sharks not moving.
Yeah, I think San Jose have been playing actually pretty well, honestly. Um, I've liked what I've seen on some parts, especially compared to Vancouver. But I do understand that Vancouver had a really rough week in regards to schedule on the people they played. But yeah, what tipped it was that the coaching change. I think at this point, doing a coaching change like that and doing the way they did, I think that demoralizes that whole locker room completely.
It was definitely the way they did it, for
Mm.
sure. But yeah, the Sharks haven't looked terrible. But yeah, I probably just want to see a little bit more from them.
Yeah,
Um, it's just one of those things that it's really hard to sort of swap those two around. I mean, they've both been probably underperforming, to be truly honest. But
yeah. Well, San Jose
yeah,
took it to New Jersey and a couple other teams. So yeah, I think Timo Meyer's really pulling his weight and upping his trade price. That's for sure.
uh-huh.
On to my pick number 26. I have team moving down one. It's the Ottawa Senators.
Oh, I contemplated on this move. I really did, but I didn't go with it just yet because the team that you've obviously put ahead of them, they've been so bad for so long, and I need to see more than just what they did this week.
Yeah,
But
I
yes,
understand that. I guess we can get to that when we get to it. But I just think like they're equal with on 43 points, equal with Montreal with 1 game in hand, 4 points behind Philadelphia with 2 games in hand. I think they've honestly looked a little bit ordinary. Getting like they're shooting well and everything, but just they concede too many goals, and it's been consistent of just conceding too many goals, and that's what disappoints me. They did outplay St. Louis, I think, and still got the loss, which was very disappointing as well.
and then got absolutely whacked in the back-to-back against Pittsburgh and Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just not gone right for Ottawa at all this year. They've looked good at times, but they just can't get it done. They need to shore up that defense, and probably need to look at a better goaltending tandem. But they've got the pieces. Just got to add a few more, and I think they can turn their season around for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I think anyone from any teams that don't make the playoffs this year would probably be looking at a Bruce Boudreau coaching change. I think there's a few teams that we've talked about and to talk about that need a coaching change. So I think we could see that this year or maybe in the off season, but most possibly this year.
Yeah, just depends on how keen people are to get him on board.
Yeah, pretty much. Already, your pick, I believe.
Yep. P26. Moving up one for the week they had, but I just couldn't move them up any further than that. I got the Montreal Canadiens, but they had a really good week.
Yeah, I've got them moving up one.
Performed really good. Beat Toronto again, which, why not? Apparently they've just got their number. That's the one thing Toronto fans are probably happy about this year is Montreal aren't going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think Montreal had a really good week. They beat Rangers, Jets,
they
and
beat
Toronto.
3 of the top 10 teams.
Yeah, so
3 teams in the top 10.
They could have easily went 0-4 this week, but they go 3-1. And I think they're playing with those results and just playing a little bit better than Ottawa. I don't think Ottawa's shown up, but Montreal was very inconsistent, and I can definitely see them just dropping off again because that's what these type of teams do.
Yeah, for sure. And especially with the fact that Caulfield's out for the rest of the season, that's not going to help at all. So
it probably does help them because they do want to tank. So
well, yeah. Sorry, it depends on how you look at it, right? They probably won't win too many more games, but that kind of helps them. So yeah. Imagine adding Connor Bedard to the Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield sort of mix that they've got. Kirby Dark and all the rest of that. They'll have a pretty solid lineup if they could do that.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
My pick number 24, a team that doesn't move. It's the Philadelphia Flyers. Don't think they had a great week. If I just open it here, it was 2-2, but they beat Detroit. They lose to Chicago, who we talked about had a good week, and then they beat Anaheim, but then they get destroyed by Boston, 6-0. It's like the Detroit game was a good win, but the Anaheim game's expected. So I don't see anything that was super shocking besides the Chicago loss. So I couldn't have them moving up. And from what the teams were doing below, I couldn't have them moving down at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like you look at it and go, they got the job done against Anaheim, good win against Detroit, but then they drop a game they probably shouldn't against Chicago, and they get absolutely walloped by Boston. So, you sum it up and you go, well, they've probably had more of a negative week than a positive, but they did get the 2 wins. So, yeah, I couldn't move them, that's for sure.
Yep.
All right. Going on to P23. Team that I think all of their fans had high hopes for a potential playoff berth this year. But I think you may as well call it a day on that one because I don't think they're going to make it this year. That's the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, that's where I have Detroit moving down a couple positions. You just can't have a roller coaster season like that and really expect to compete in the East. And that's pretty much just to sum up. where they've been. They'll go and have an amazing week defeating like top 10 teams, and then the next week they'll go and lose to bottom 10 teams. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, like look at their last 2 weeks. Prime example, man. They beat Winnipeg. They beat Toronto.
mm,
They beat Vegas, but they lost to Columbus. They lost to Arizona. They lost to Philadelphia.
yeah,
So like they beat 3 teams that you'd probably expect them to lose and then lost to the 3 teams that you'd expect them to beat. It's just, like if they beat Columbus, Arizona, and Philly like they should have, and then picked up those wins against Winnipeg, Toronto, and Vegas like they did, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, they're in the hunt,
yeah. They're probably
but not
around the top
now.
16. Yeah,
Yeah, but not if you can't beat the teams you should be beating. You
yeah.
can get these good wins against top 10 teams all you want, but if you're not going to beat the bottom 10, it doesn't mean anything.
On to another team that's probably fallen off the face of the earth. I've got at 22, I believe it is the New York Islanders.
I, yeah,
Moving down
yeah.
4 positions. They've just fallen off the face of the earth. They will go 0-4 this week. They they had a somewhat hard week in regards to facing Carolina, Boston, and Washington. And then you can throw in Buffalo as well. So it was a hard week, but if you're vying for a playoff, you need to be winning or at least competing in these games, taking a point here or there. They've only taken 1 point with the game against Washington. I don't like what they're doing. They look disinterested, and I think it's honestly the Lou Lamoriello curse coming in. Personally, I think their numbers could be done from now and in the future if something's not done.
Yeah, well, it's going to be tough for them, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, that Eastern Conference is tough, and that Metro Division is tough. So for them to stay relevant with teams like Carolina, New Jersey, New York Rangers, just those 3 teams aren't going to go anywhere in the next year or two. They're going to be around that same top 3 mark for probably the next 5 years. So I can't see the Islanders pushing any of them out. And then you look at start looking at your wild cards. It's like that's with teams like Buffalo, Ottawa, um, and you've obviously got Florida who would be vying for that wild card spot as well.
Mm.
I think this could be the end of them if they don't do something drastic. They may be forced into a rebuild. They're
Yeah,
not exactly a young team,
well that's the issue.
so
They've been doing a lot of bringing in a lot of old people for the last few years. Poaching a lot of ex New Jersey old players. It's just there's not enough
and
youth.
trading out their draft picks
Yeah,
like usual.
yeah. So
Yeah.
they could be done, especially on a season like this. Um, anyway, moving on.
All right, on to 21. Another team. Talking of teams that could be done, could be heading into rebuilds. I think we thought these guys could probably do more of a retooling, but um, yeah, I've got the St. Louis Blues moving up one spot.
Yeah, I debated with having New York above St. Louis, but then realized New York only won 2 games so far this month. Only
They've
scored.
won 1 out of their last 9 as
Yeah,
well. The
eh,
Islanders. It's
yeah,
bad.
and only scored over 3 goals like 2 times this year so far as well. So that's why I've got St. Louis jumping New York Islanders. I don't think they've had a bad week at all. They've just had a really weird season. They go 2-1, and their 1 game loss is to Chicago. So and they beat Ottawa and Nashville. So teams that they could be competing against. It would have been good to see them go 3-0 and beat Chicago. But when you concede 5 on 18 shots, you got issues.
Yeah, for sure. They're just too inconsistent. Binnington can't pull his shit together. Um, and they can get offense at times, and then it can dry up, and then their defense can just fall to absolute shit. So I just don't know where to go for them, especially with the likes of Tarasenko and O'Reilly coming up. Um, you've just got to start looking at it and going, well, if they're not going to re-sign, you've got to be trading them before
Well,
the
they
deadline.
they need value. I would be trading. They need the value because they still
You
have
have
some
to,
some
otherwise you're
young
going to put
stars.
yourself
So
back.
yeah, they can
Well,
still
exactly.
compete.
You're just going to put. They can. They do have the young stars in Thomas and Kyrou and all the rest of that. But if they lose Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko for nothing, it puts the franchise back years. So, if those two aren't going to sign, they've got to trade them out as soon as they can and get as much as they can for them.
Alrighty. Moving on to pick number 20, I have the Florida Panthers. Now they're coming off an amazing week. I think they get 7 out of 8 points. They beat Buffalo. They OT lose to Toronto on the back to back. Then they beat Montreal and then Minnesota Wild. So some good wins there. I don't think they really they score 4 goals on 19 shots against Toronto. But then they completely go and destroy Montreal. And I think they were kind of the better team against the Wild, although it was a pretty close game. They're on the up and the up, but I can't move them any further, honestly. I have to see a lot more. But they go up 3 positions.
Yeah, I think it was well deserved moving up those 3 positions, but I'm with you on that. Um I think that they've been that poor this season that I'm half expecting them to go into this week. It's a tough week coming up for them as well. 2 back-to-backs, and I'm just half expecting them to get 1 point. So they've gone from 7 out of 8, and I'm expecting them to go 1 out of 8 because that's just been their season.
Mm.
Um, if they want to be a chance to make playoffs, they need to make something of this week before the All-Star break. But yeah, like until I see them, don't get me wrong, if they get to the end of this week and they take 7 out of 8 points, well, they could be in the top 16.
Yeah.
But I can't, yeah,
Well,
I can't push them up.
like I always said though, their coaching is the problem this year, and I think with Bruce Boudreau just come on the market, I don't think there's a better chance and time to get a new coach to try and rejuvenate your season because they
Well,
still
if any team was going to do it, it
that
should be them because
they're my
they
favorite to
have to
do it.
be, yeah. Well, they have to be, right? Because if you look at all the teams that aren't in the playoffs right now, that you wouldn't that you would have expected to be in there, Florida would be the number one
Yep.
that's out of playoffs. Like I look at St. Louis, Nashville, Calgary to an extent, and I'm like, yeah, I could see that happening. But I don't think anyone really thought Florida at this stage of the year would be scraping to get into a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's been
And
very
the
disappointing.
biggest change with them is that they lost Joel Quenneville and Burnett within 12 months.
Yep.
So clearly it's a coaching issue.
No, I
And
agree.
yeah,
Alrighty, your pick 19.
all right, moving on to P19. Um, team, I can't really make too much out of these guys. They're similar to St. Louis and Detroit, and they go up and they go down, and it's just who knows what they're going to do week in, week out. But they had a good week. I think they got 3 Ws. Nashville Predators.
That's where I have them as well. Just going up 1 position. They did have a good week, but they've had such bad weeks. It's harder to move them up. 18 and higher. But like you said, they had a really good week. But they've done that. They have a good week, then they have a bad week. But
Oh, exactly.
I was impressed by this week. Like their victories weren't the biggest victories, but they beat the teams they're expected, and they lost 5-2 against St. Louis, which it happens. So I'm pretty impressed. I just want to see it happen again next week.
Yeah, exactly. They've got to back it up, don't they? I mean, they've got 2 hard games coming up before the All-Star break in Winnipeg and New Jersey. But they're both at home. So, um, if they want to make anything of their season, they've probably got to pick up at least 3 points out of these 2 games. But I don't know. I'm in the same position I am with St. Louis and New York Islanders with Nashville. I just
Mm,
feel like they're done. They need something to come in and rejuvenate them, either tearing it down and going into rebuild mode, or something's got to happen, because I just can't see with what they've got there currently them going anywhere. I don't see them all of a sudden becoming a contender next year.
yeah, I
Um,
agree. On to pick 18. Team moving down just a bit. They had a bad week, but well, an offy week, but they did have somewhat of a hard week. But it's the Calgary Flames. It's yeah, moved down 3 positions for me. It's just
on a bit of a roll, yeah.
yeah, like they did end the week good, pretty much destroying Tampa, but they did lose to Nashville and they did lose to Colorado. I do think they're playing better, but I think the teams around them that have jumped them have just had just looking that much better. So unfortunately, they were just victim. And if they got 1 or 2 better results, then they probably wouldn't have been. But the other teams just get the jump them on the weeks they had.
Yeah, that's it, right? You had a couple of teams in and around these spots that just had phenomenal weeks, and they've had a negative week in the sense of um, going 1 and 2. So yeah, I mean, I think these guys are a team that, if they make the playoffs, they play a pretty tough style of hockey that it'd probably hold up in playoffs, but they've got to get there first,
Mm,
and that's their biggest issue right now, is that they're coming up against a Edmonton team who's all of a sudden starting to turn it on. Colorado, who would have thought they're only just holding on to a playoff spot at the moment. Um, and Nashville and St. Louis are chasing their tail as well. So it's not going to be easy for them at all
nah, I
going
agree.
forward. All right, moving on to 17. They didn't have a terrible week. They're not playing terrible hockey. I think they're playing all right, but they slip out of my top 16 this week, just based on the form of a couple of teams who push them out. I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I've got them moving down 1, just slightly outside the top 16 as well. So it's 17. Looks like we're still on the roll. And yeah,
Yeah,
like you said, like they're not playing as good as they should be. But they're still playing decent. They're competing. But yeah, it's just the other teams around them have just become, stepped up their game, and so they just get leapfrogged outside the top 16.
yeah, and the thing is, they take 5 out of 6 points this week, which is solid, but you kind of expect them to, against Anaheim, Ottawa, and Ottawa. Um, if they don't take at least 4 of those points, you're probably saying that's a bad week. Um, and yeah, I don't think they're quite where they want to be. And the thing is, they find it. They find glimpses of it where they're almost unbeatable, and they're just absolute fire on the ice. They're quick, they're fast paced, they're just dangerous, and then it just falls to shit, and they can't win a game to save their life. Um, like, I tell you what, if they make the playoffs and they can just get it right at the right time, they'll be very dangerous. But they could also go the other way, where they just go into the playoffs and get swept
Mm,
because they shit the bed at the wrong time. It's just Jekyll and Hyde at the moment with these guys.
alrighty. P16. So the top 16 now. Um, Team moving down a couple of positions for me as the Buffalo Sabres, just scraping in. They didn't have a great week. It's They lose to Florida. They OT lose to Chicago, which was disappointing. And then the OT win against New York Islanders, and then their 6-3 win against the Ducks. So a few close games there in the week, but they go 2-2. I was a bit disappointed. I still think they're playing exciting hockey, but yeah, I just don't think they're just sitting in the 16 at the moment. It's making it hard for them.
Yeah, and that game against Chicago, they take a point, which helps. It is good, but if they're going to truly compete for a playoff spot, like they're attempting to do, they've really got to be taking like both points in that game. It's great that they at least got a point out of it, but they're the teams you've got to be taking 2 points from. You can't be leaving points on the table against teams like that. Um, and then obviously losing to Florida, who is competing for that wild card spot that you're after. So I think for me, I don't think Buffalo will make it this year. I like the way they're playing. I like what they're doing, but I think this is going to be a year where they miss out by maybe 5 to 10 points out of the playoffs. And then next year's that big push. I think they're getting a lot of things right now, and I think another sort of preseason and training camp and all the rest of that under their belts of some of these young players, and next year they're gonna be very hard to stop. I know the Atlantic has three really solid sides in there, but like I could see them pushing those three sides for sure.
One of them in Boston could drop off the face of the earth next year just because of the players they
All
lose
that
and
is true.
whatnot. So they might not be what they were, but yeah, I see your point there.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to E15. Um, got a team going on a bit of a run at the moment. They look like they could have been out and out for a bit there. But they've turned it around and put some wins together. And it's the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, okay. I guess this is where we get mixed up. I actually have them at 12.
Whoa,
I'm going up
he's
five
gone. He's
positions.
gone hard.
Yeah,
He
well,
has gone hard on them.
I don't think I've gone hard. Like they've been getting results, and then they'll just be getting more results more consistently now. Um, well, like they're a point behind LA with one game in hands. They're 3 points above Wild with 3 games and extra played. They're same points as the Rangers, but Rangers have 2 games in hand, so they're not far behind the teams that we're yet to talk about. So I don't think they're far off. I think this group from about 15 to 12, maybe even 11 to 10 is very close though. Well, I think it's a very close 15 to 10 around that area.
Yeah, I think, like the thing where I hesitated a little bit, they got the win against Seattle. I think that Seattle were on a back to back. But like they have won six on the trot, but they capitalized on Anaheim, capitalized on San Jose, capitalized on Vancouver, and then they've got good wins against Vegas, Seattle, and Tampa. But yeah, like I said, Seattle is on that back to back. Um, I just Yeah, I think I need to see more from them because I've seen so much defensive woes that yeah, it looks good at the moment, but if if the Kraken weren't on a back to back and a tough back to back, mind you, um, does that go the other way? And yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just a little bit hesitant on them just for now. I know the McDavid effect and all the rest of that, and he can do some phenomenal things, but I'm still not convinced with their defense.
Yeah, no,
It's my
they're
biggest
they've
concern.
definitely got woes, but I think their offense is really clicking at the moment. It's actually just too strong. I think Zach
Mm.
Hyman's playing amazing, having an amazing year. I think even Nugent Hopkins is going under the radar on a good season. So I think their forward lines,
He's done that all he's
yeah.
done that all his career.
So yeah, he's just obviously going to get overshadowed with the names above him. But yeah, I've gone a little bit higher just because I think because of the run they've had now, they've pushed themselves into the echelons of this 15 to 10 mark, and I think they will honestly, because they're on the run and the other teams are not on runs, I think some of them have been dropping off. That's why they move up a couple more.
the craziest thing for me with these guys is they've still only got 4 players who have scored over 10 goals.
Yeah.
And those 4 players have all scored more than 20. So
Yeah. It
you got their top 4, and then there's no one.
yeah. It's kind of like the Montreal. They've really only got like one line, but their one line just does everything. Whereas Montreal, they do some, but they can't pull that
Yeah,
way. But yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So my 15 team that moves it down 3 positions, I've got the LA Kings.
Yeah, yeah, he's punished them a fair bit. Um, I I sort of gave them a sort of a freebie this week. I've left them at 12. Um, I didn't want to move on them too quickly. They got absolutely belted by Dallas and they lost against Nashville. I understand that, but I've liked what they've been doing, and I
Yeah,
didn't want to move on them too quickly
it's interesting.
because
It's
I've
interesting you
liked
don't
the
move
way
them
they've
though.
been playing.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you
Yeah,
don't move
I,
them.
oh mate, dude, at the start of the season, I was massive on these. I didn't like their game style. I didn't like the way they're playing. I've still got my qualms with them, but I just think the way they've been playing, like lately, before this little slip of theirs, their 3-game losing streak that they're on now. Um, I they were playing some good hockey, and even last week their loss against New Jersey, they still were probably the better team for parts of that game, and played a really good game. Ended up getting run over in the end, but they still played a really good game. I think they were in it the whole game against Nashville, um, and you could probably argue that they were the better team and just got sort of run over in that last period. But yeah, I don't know. I've still got them at 12 because I expect them to bounce back pretty quickly.
That's fair. I don't think they're playing bad hockey. I just think they're not getting results. And I think that's what matters for the top 16. Um,
Mhm.
and I'd probably fear coming up against Edmonton at this moment than LA. But like I said, it's only because of that one line factor. But all right, your pick.
All right, P14, uh, team that sort of has made these runs, but we expect them to come back and we expect them to turn back into the champions they are once they got a full strength side. It's Colorado Avalanche.
Alrighty, I've got them at P13. So yeah,
Oh, he's gone 13.
they go up 6 for me. They're looking good. That's pretty much it. I think they're looking what they were expecting them to eventually look like, and I think they're at that point now where they're ready to take this for the rest of the season. I also think they have an easy run for the rest of the season. They got some like 13 or 15 games that are really easy that are on the teams that are in the Bedard race essentially. So I think they could just keep shooting up the standings in a sense for how easy their run to the end could be.
Well, I'll agree with you in the sense of when it comes to March, to late March. Yep, I agree with that. But I'd have to say and for the rest of the season. But I think immediately after the All-Star break, that is definitely not the case. Their February is jam-packed with top teams. Um, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Florida, Tampa, Minnesota, Edmonton, Vegas, Winnipeg, and then New Jersey and Dallas to start the next month. But it does get a lot easier from there. I think they play Anaheim 2 or 3 times. They play San Jose 3 times. They play Arizona 3 times. So I think 9 games they come up against San Jose, Arizona, and Anaheim
Mm.
in the last month and a half. So yeah, they do come home with a wet sail, um, which will probably help them out. But yeah, they definitely have to get through that February period beforehand.
But yeah, they go 4 and
But
0
I,
this
I
week,
I expect they'll make it.
which is good. Detroit, Calgary,
Hmm.
Vancouver, and Seattle. losing a shootout. So they all fall to Colorado this week, and I just think they're looking like the old Colorado. So that's why I'm big on them.
Yeah, I hope they turn it on because I think when they're on and they're playing their best hockey, they're just one of the best teams to watch. It's so fun. It's the hockey they play is just phenomenal. And just the way they skate, the way they pass the puck, the plays that they make, like it's clinical. And the fact that we have only seen that in glimpses this year has just been super disappointing.
Alrighty, P14 for me. Moving down one position, it is the Washington Capitals. And for the week, they go 2-2. They OT win against the Islanders, lose to the Wild, win against Arizona, then they lose to Vegas. So honestly, winning the games they should, losing the games they should, in a sense. Like I feel like they should be competing better against Vegas, losing 6-2. And they were probably the better team in the Wild game, but they still lose 4-2. So I don't know. I don't think they're as strong as they were probably a couple of weeks ago on how they're looking on ice. And I think other teams like Edmonton, Colorado have turned it on, whereas teams like Capitals and LA and even Buffalo are kind of even lagging a little bit. So that's where I've got them.
Yeah, I mean, especially after the week Vegas sort of had, um, you, Washington probably could have been expecting to capitalize off that. But unfortunately for them, it wasn't to be, and Vegas sort of bounced back from their 3-game losing streak with a big win. But yeah, I'm not too sure on Washington. I think they've done a lot to get themselves back into a good position. But they have played obviously the 3 more games than Pittsburgh, and a game more than Florida. But they are still, you know, they're 5 points clear with 1 more game played in front of Florida. So they're a game and a half if you take away the game in hand, um, in a wild card spot. So I think they're still going to be heavy competitors for that spot, and I think it's going to be very hard to kick them out. But yeah, they've definitely dropped off from what we were seeing, where they were looking like one of the most dangerous teams in the league
Yeah,
only a couple of weeks ago.
I think they're more closer to the Pittsburgh level these now. Like they're what 2 points ahead, but 3 games played extra compared to Pittsburgh. I don't see Washington making the top 3 in the Metro. I think it's definitely a wild card for them, and unless
For
they
sure,
unless they go crazy, but yeah,
which
or
they are capable of doing, but
definitely.
I just don't see any of those 3 teams currently sitting in there getting kicked out. Um, I think they're the 3 best Metro teams at the moment, and I can't see anyone moving them out of their spots. All
Alrighty.
right, moving on to P11. I've got. I think they probably could have dropped down if it wasn't for that big win against Washington. And I got the Vegas Golden Knights. Bit of a
Uh,
disappointing week for them.
Vegas Golden Knights. I have them at 9 still, so they're still in my top 10.
Ooh. Oh, they didn't move for you. You were a
Yeah,
bit higher on them last week.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, after the week they had, I couldn't justify moving them up. Like I said, if they lost to Washington, they probably moved down. Um, Very disappointing against Dallas. And then to lose to Detroit, who haven't exactly been fantastic lately. It's probably just sort of summing up Vegas, or summed up Vegas's week. They were abysmal against Dallas, and then get beaten by a team that they probably should be beating.
yeah. No, I agree. That's why I couldn't move on them. I probably would have had them moving down, but the other teams around them didn't do much either. I just got a thunderstorm around my area, so that's why the dogs are going off. But I'll move on to P11 for me. It's a team team just outside the top 10 for me is the Minnesota Wild. They also don't move.
I've just got them up one spot in number 10. I was a bit higher on them last week, but they've moved down one spot for me.
Yeah, they beat the Capitals, they lose to the Canes, and then they lose to Florida, going 1-2. Hard week, definitely a hard week for them. I just would have liked to see 3 out of 6 points at least, but they only get the 2 out of 6. It's I still think they're competing well, but the Florida game gave me a little questions. But I just couldn't move them. I can't move them up. I can't move them down because of how the teams have performed. So it's just a flat 0 for them to this week.
Yeah, I mean, they were really competitive against Florida. They were in the game the whole time, but it's probably the game that you expect them to win. I know Florida's sort of turned it on a little bit lately, but if Minnesota are going to be this potential contender that we talked about earlier on, um, they've probably got to be winning those games, or at least getting, like you said, the extra point out of it. The fact that they only take 2 points this week is extremely disappointing. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're still clearly embedded into the into a top 3 spot at the moment. But yeah, I can't see Nashville or St. Louis taking taking their spot away from them.
No,
But
no.
at at the same time, you do have Colorado on your tail, so they've got to be a little bit concerned about that because yeah, if it pushes them into a wild card spot, all of a sudden it could mean trouble for them.
Yep. Ready? You're P9.
At P9, still moving down a spot. Um, Not really off the back. They didn't have a great week. Um, but it was more off of what another team around them did. Um, I've got the New York Rangers.
Yeah, I don't have them moving this week either. So just Vegas, New York Rangers. Wow, just chilling in their spots from last week, really. Uh, what do you say about their week? Really, they win 1 out of 3 games. The one win was against Columbus on a back-to-back, so I consider that a good win, even though it is against Columbus. But they lose the day before against the Canadians,
Yes.
2-1, which is very, very disappointing for me. And then they
Yeah, I mean
lose
the
3-1 against
Boston
Boston.
game. Yeah, the Boston game. That happens. It was what it was. I thought it was a really entertaining game. I thought Swayman played fantastically well for Boston. And Boston were just clinical as always. But yeah, it really does come down to that Montreal game. That's a game that they just can't be losing. Um, so yeah, for me, they moved down one this week. But I expect they should turn it around. But they do have a tough week next week. 3 tough teams before they go into the All-Star break. So it'll be interesting to see what they can make of it.
Yeah, no, they're definitely a team that can win those games though. I don't think they're on a slide already. P8 for me, team moving down. Just one position. I got the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, yeah,
And
me too. I've got them there. They
yeah,
they sort of just had a bit of a hiccup.
yeah, it
But
was
they
like
did have a
a big hiccup, but
tough
yeah,
week.
but like you said, tough week, very tough
Yeah, a
week.
very tough week.
But I'd say like what they did, they get that extra point in the shootout against Colorado. Like that was a very tight game. I enjoyed that one, and honestly, 2 teams playing really great hockey. And that's what the difference with teams we spoke about earlier is they're just getting that point. They go to
Hmm.
OT against New Jersey. Both teams, really good teams. The Oilers, they lose to, but they've been on fire, and then they lose to Tampa. So honestly, very, very tough week. I couldn't demote them at all, really, for that. Like, they moved down 1, and that's it for me. I could see people moving them further down, but I couldn't.
I think that back to back was really tough. Not to mention, it wasn't just the fact it was a back to back; it was tough travel conditions as well for them. So it wasn't just a normal back to back. It was also a lot of travel, which was quite difficult. So, um, yeah, I sort of can't hold too much against them. I thought they probably dominated the Devils for most of that game and should have won it in regulation. Obviously, the Devils have had a trend of doing this in pulling the goalie and scoring an empty net goal to take it to OT. Um, funny thing with that on that situation is they should have won it in regulation, but then they shouldn't have won it in OT. So it was a hard game. I remember watching it and I thought they should have had the 2 points wrapped up in regulation. There was no right to go to OT, and then they won it in OT, and I was like, well, you didn't really deserve that. You just absolutely wiped out the goaltender. No call gets made, and you score 8 seconds after that happens. But I looked at it and went, well, they did the 2 points in regulation, so I'll let that one slide, even though it was a howler by the ref.
Yeah, well, you expect that in NHL. But no, they're being one of the better teams and stronger teams, which is good for how they did in their first season. So I hope they make the
Yeah.
playoffs, and I look forward to that.
They just look really solid defensively. That Adam Larson and Vince Dunn pair has just been phenomenal for them.
Mm, I agree.
Right, moving on to P7. Just moving down one spot. I've got the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, that's where I've got Winnipeg as well. Just moving down one
It's not.
position.
It wasn't really like they didn't have a great week. But I definitely could have kept them in the same spot. A team that's moved above them just had a a really impressive week. Um, and probably falling victim to Montreal. I know Montreal had a bit of a run this week, but falling victim to Montreal probably didn't help Winnipeg's case this week.
Yeah, yeah, like they only win 2-1 against Arizona as well, and it was pretty close. So it was actually very exciting. Watching Arizona almost take it to them, but then they lose to Montreal, like you said. Then same score line, lose to Toronto 4-1. Then they win against Ottawa 5-1. So versing the Canadian teams, they go one out of three, and I think it's a very disappointing week for them. Just because I think that where they are, at this position, you should be taking majority of your games. I think they're looking alright. I think Hellebuck's not having to do as much as he was in the earlier season, start of the season, but I still fear players that they've got on that team. They've got snipers, and they're just scoring goals when honestly, like they shouldn't. It's just top corner
Yeah,
or something, and then they do score goals that they should score. But yeah, I just
yeah.
moving down one.
I think that's the thing. If they've got some serious firepower, if their defense, you just want to grab them by the scruff of the neck and say, guys, you've got one of the best goaltenders in the league. Our offense is phenomenal. Pull your shit together because we could really win a cup if you guys pull your shit together. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that's holding them back at the moment. If they could, and you said it, they have been better and they have been taking some of that pressure off of Hellebuck. But yeah, if they could just be more consistent with that and help him out a little bit more, it's the sky's the limit for that team with Hellebuck in net because that guy he's a freak. And could very well win the event. Um, oh,
Vesna.
oh my God, Vezina Trophy this year. He's been that good.
Well, if you tell me that you have to select one goalie to take into your Stanley Cup run team, I would probably pick Hellebuck first. Um, he's just a staple on how solid he is through and through. Uh,
Yeah, he's just impressive constantly. Save percentage is always high. Doesn't let in that many goals. Yeah, you can't argue.
Alrighty. Moving up. on to P6, I have moving up 2 positions. It's the Dallas Stars, and they just had a better week. They had what was it? 3 games. They win by 4-0 against Arizona, LA on a back-to-back, and Vegas. And then their one loss was a disappointing loss against San Jose. I do think San Jose has been playing better, but I don't think a team like Dallas should be coughing that win up. You should at least be taking a
No.
point. You should at least be taking a point if you're going to lose to a team like that. But
Yeah.
they completely destroyed the rest, and it was a really good win against Vegas, going 4-0. So that's why they moved
I
up.
mean, you can't not reward that, right? Like, when was the last time a team has won 3 4-0 victories in the same week? Like, I couldn't imagine that's been done too many times before. Teams barely win, 2 shutout wins in a week, let alone 3, and all the same scoreline. The San Jose one sort of was a bit of a ding on their week, but other than that, I mean, 3 4 wins. 2 of them are against really solid opponents in Vegas and LA Kings. Yeah, they can be really deadly when they want to, Dallas, and then they can shit the bed as well. So
No, I think if you
it's
average it out, they've
it's
been pretty
interesting.
consistent around the 6-7 mark in the power rankings. But they've been yo-yoing, bit top 5 to then lower. Like you were definitely lower on them last week at 10. But yeah, I think this is where they belong, is around the 6 mark. Feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're getting good goaltending as well, which is always a help.
Alrighty, yeah, P5 for you.
Right. Moving on to P5, we're into the top 5 here. Just moving down a couple spots. Nothing major really. Just was a little bit disappointed in the way they ended the week. So I sort of, I shouldn't say punish, but punish them a little bit, and they dropped down 2 spots. Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I debated on what to do with this one, but I just have them dropping down 1, not 2, so I got them at 4.
No, that's fair. Losing to Edmonton on the back to back. This is probably to bring up my point. 2 of Edmonton's wins this week were teams on back to backs.
Yeah. Well,
And
welcome to
they weren't
NHL
on back to
scheduling.
backs. Yeah. They play 2 teams on back to backs, but they didn't play on a back to back. Yeah, it's crazy how they work this scheduling. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, when
But
you have like a
so
14 games in one day, yeah.
probably a little bit harsh to move them down the 2 spots, but yeah, I just a little bit disappointed in their last 2 games this week.
Yeah, I can understand that for the teams that they lost against. Um, I was teetering between like 3 and 5, here or there, but I had to move them down. I almost did with the moving it down to 5, but it didn't feel right. I feel like they're a better team, so that's why they're at 4 for me. But honestly, being at 4, that's still amazing for them. But yeah,
And they're still playing some really good hockey. So yeah, I still think they're primed for a 4th straight Stanley Cup appearance if they keep going. All
alrighty.
right.
So my P5 team I teetered with was the Toronto Maple Leafs. They don't move for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, they got 1 spot for me.
Like, it was
And they
good.
go into P4.
Like, it was a good week. 5 out of 6 points. OT win for against the Panthers, but conceding 4 on 19 shots. How good of a win is that? Then their good win was the 4-1 against Winnipeg. I really think that was a good win, but then they OT lose to Canadians. I think Canadians just went and decided to upset a few teams this week. And
Just Canadians just have their number. That's the thing. Like, it's what do you do? Like, yeah, it's just one of those matchups. It's like Arizona, Who's Arizona? Oh, Toronto. It's Arizona and Toronto. I think it's just Toronto and any bottom team. Like,
But there is. I was teetering on moving Toronto higher, just because of how Nylander's been playing. I think
phenomenal, right?
he's playing phenomenal. So just on him alone, just on his back, I almost moved them to 4, and I think Matthews is playing better as well.
He's finally turning up, scoring some goals, which everyone's been waiting for him to do all year. Um, so yeah, I mean, look, they're still looking super dangerous. Still, this is a year that I could see them moving out of the first round, but it's going to be difficult either way because they're not going to get that first division spot like they'd be hoping for because I just don't think anyone's catching Boston this year. Um, unless they completely shit the bed. But um, the issue that they've got is they're most likely going to come up against Tampa Bay,
Mm.
who also look phenomenal. So I mean, we're going to get one hell of a series, that's for sure. But you do have to feel for Toronto fans a little bit. I know everyone loves they're the bunt of the joke and can't get past the first round, but the teams they have to come up against in the first round every year except for the Montreal one. That's on you guys. The fact that you couldn't get out of the first round that year, that's on you. Um, but having to come up against Boston and Tampa Bay year after year, that's rough. I've got a feel for them on that one, and it's going to happen again this year.
Yeah, well, that's how the NHL wants to do their playoffs. So I guess that's what's going to happen to good teams when it comes in the first and second round in the playoffs. Um,
Yeah, it is disappointing. That
mm,
is one of the big things. Like that's probably one of the things you're wanting to see to either be a conference final or get into the conference finals, not to be a first round series.
yep.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's the hard thing. On to the
yeah.
top 3, then. Your pick.
All right, top three. Um, yeah, it's hard to really go past these guys. I know they fell off the wagon a little bit there, but they were still playing extremely good hockey, just not getting results. And they're getting results again. Um, Absolute superstar in Jack Hughes. Just keeps on scoring, keeps on doing everything. Even his defensive game is phenomenal at the moment. Got the New Jersey Devils. They're just
Yeah. Oh, I,
they're
I,
back on a
I
roll.
I wanted to push them over Carolina, honestly, but before the week started, if they had a good week, but then they go and only win their game against San Jose in shootout, and then the OT loss to Seattle, and they only played 2 games, so it's a small sample. But the
Yeah.
only winning in shootout was a bit disappointing for me. But they do get the 2 points.
Yeah, and they did struggle in that first period against San Jose. They did struggle. It's actually surprising because most of the games you don't see the Devils get outplayed too much, especially this year. They've been the better team in just about every game they've played. But San Jose had their number for a good period and a bit there, um, and then they finally showed up, took it to OT, or took it to shootout and got the win. Um, and even against the Kraken, they were probably outplayed, um, but they just had that grit and that no quit mentality to get it to OT. We're a bit unfortunate to lose that one. Probably should have had a penalty before the goal went in, but it is what it is. Kraken's a really solid side. Um, but yeah, you can't not like what they're doing at the moment. They're getting pretty complete on ice performance.
Yeah, so moving on to pick number 2. Pretty standard. It's the Carolina Hurricanes.
What?
Thinking.
You haven't put Boston at number two? How?
I wouldn't make a
Come on.
mistake like you. Um, but yeah, they get 5 out of 6 points. They beat the Wild and New York Islanders 5-2, and a shootout loss to Vancouver was their only little hiccup for the week. But they're still playing really, really good hockey. Nice, fast-paced, moving hockey. It's lethal.
Really
It's
solid defensively
Yeah, it's
as
it.
well.
And you got to look at the top 5, and they're all from the East, Metro and Atlantic. So and they're somehow still able to be there while funneling points off each other. Yeah, it's hard to floor them. Honestly, I think it's just sometimes they take bad shots, if that makes sense, where it's like at the pads or something and not high. Um, but that's really my only flaw with them at the moment.
They do love to shoot the puck, and sometimes that's at the detriment of an actual quality shot. But again, sometimes that's all it takes. Like you do see some of those teams that just try to be too pedantic and never get a shot off. Sometimes just shooting the puck gets you those gritty goals. But yeah, like I think Carolina is as geared as any of these teams in the top 10 to really make a run for the Stanley Cup this year for sure.
And your pick for number one, surprise us.
All right. Well, surprise, surprise, I have the Chicago Blackhawks.
Hey man, on the
Um,
week they had, yeah, I can see it.
yeah, they're on absolute fire. Nah, you can't go past the Boston Bruins. Um, I think everyone's waiting for it. I even think Boston fans are waiting for it, and they're like, "Well, we're going to fall apart eventually. We're going to have a slip up at some point." Um, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, they go and
Uh,
destroy Philly. Then they win 4-1
yeah,
against Islanders and 3-1 against the Rangers. It, like they only conceded 2 goals in 3 games. Like,
yeah, but like they lose their first regulation home game of the season last week against Seattle, and you think, oh, well, maybe that'll rock them because they lost 3-0, and it's like, okay, maybe this could be the thing that finally sends them on a bit of a spiral. Nah, bounce straight back, beat Toronto, smack Philly 6-0, beat the Islanders, beat the Rangers. Like, that's just yeah, they're just phenomenal this year. Pavel Zacha signs his contract, and then I think he scored like 3 or 4 goals um, uh,
yeah,
after
some
signing his contract.
really
So
good goals too. Good sniping
yeah,
goals.
yeah,
Um,
everyone was making fun of him because when he signed, he missed an absolute sitter of an open net.
which he
But
does.
then he's just gone, which he does do. But like you've got to give credit to the guy. Like he's playing some really good hockey.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think, yeah,
I just think
that
that
contract
Boston are
stands
playing
up.
so fast. It's actually insane how fast they're moving. And
Yep.
I don't know like it's how they're moving or their structure, but the defenders when they're defending in the defensive zone, like they collapse too much to the net, and then there's just a Boston player or two just free, kind of in the higher slot towards the point, and then they just skate in and shoot. And I've seen it a few times, or they do like a cross ice pass to an open guy.
Mm.
It has to be with the puck movement, how fast they're skating, they're moving their legs, that they're getting those gaps, and they're really big gaps, and that's why they're scoring goals the way they are. They got what 13 goals to 2 in 3 games. That's insane. And look,
Yeah.
there's not much to floor with them. It's kind of scary seeing how good they are playing, but and it's going to be interesting what they do on the trade deadline, assuming that this is probably the run. They're probably going to have to go all out. There's talks about them for Bo Horvat, but they have to give up, you know, their draft picks. But if you're going to do it for a year, I think this is the year you go all out.
Yeah, I agree in the sense of this is the year to do it. Because like I said, depending on what happens with Pasta, this could be their last year if Pasta doesn't re-sign. Um, it could be a see you later, game over sort of thing for them. They're on a rebuild, but I mean, how much extra do you need to add to this team? Like, it's phenomenal at the moment. It's performing
I think you're
like
just
crazy. They've
covering
got
injuries.
basically, yeah, like that's the only thing I would question with that Horvat trade is do they even need to do it? Because he is a UFA, unless he agrees to, a trade and sign. Um, do you want to risk paying too much for a Horvat bringing in another UFA that you've got to sign because they've got a lot of them at the end of this year
Well, I don't think
that they've got to worry about.
they'd sign him though. I think it's a rental. Because if you sign him, you really do clamp your hands on signing Pasta.
And that's it. They need Pasta needs to be their main focus if they want to go on, because I think signing Pasta will automatically have Bergeron playing on again and Krejci playing on again, and they're two of the key pieces. I think if Pasta was to leave, Bergeron and Krejci would probably go. Yeah, that's probably it for us. We're not going to compete next
Yeah,
year.
I'm pretty convinced they just retire anyway. Honestly, I don't know. I've it's just a sixth sense feeling that I've got. Like they're probably sitting there like, yeah, this is our biggest run. If we don't make it this year, we're never making it. Type look. So I would not
Yeah,
be. That's what I'm expecting anyway. It's my sixth sense tingling. Yeah.
I think that's the thing though. I do believe if Pasta re-signs, Boston can compete for another year or two.
Oh yeah, I agree. I just think
But yeah,
Bergie and all that might just go, nah, screw it. That was our best year.
yeah, I
um,
think it'd come down to what happens. But yeah, look, they're as geared up as anyone to make a run and win the Stanley Cup this year. And I've got my qualms with Brad Marchand, but mate, I like seeing Patrice Bergeron go out with another Stanley Cup. I definitely wouldn't be against it. And I'm a big Pavel Zacha fan. I loved him when he was in Jersey. So to see him win it would be amazing as well. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't be angry if Boston got it done,
no.
especially the way they played this year. You couldn't say they don't deserve it.
All right. Well, we had a close bottom 16, the top 16, a couple misses here and there on different opinions, but pretty good. Gives a question for debate. Do you want to sign us out or?
Yeah. So yeah, it's another week of power rankings done, guys. As always, if you want to leave a comment below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you like the video, give us a big thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. So you can find out what we'll be here every week doing power rankings. And we'll be dropping some other videos as well. So hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all of that. And yeah, like always, until next time, take it easy.
Catch you.